The Reserve Bank is still considering hiking interest rates if inflation doesn't keep improving. The opposition is set to support Labor's tax cuts, and a couple of highly criticised Aussie business leaders get some significant support. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It is Wednesday, the 7th of February, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, after the show, you are speaking with Sherelle Murphy, who is the chief economist at EY. This is a great chat.
Sure is. Sherelle knows everything about the Reserve Bank there is to know, and she was watching very closely yesterday when the new governor, Michelle Bullock, held her press conference after announcing no hike in interest rates. Fantastic chat with Sherelle, not just about the economy and what's happening, but how Michelle Bullock performed as well.
Yeah, it is a good one. It's coming up after the show, so stick around for that one. The main story this morning is really all about that. Interest rates are on hold, but the Reserve Bank still maintains that they could go higher, not lower, in coming months if inflation isn't heading towards the central bank's target range.
The Central Bank Board said while recent data shows inflation is easing, it ain't there yet. Therefore, another hike can't be ruled out. New economic forecasts released yesterday by the Reserve Bank shows inflation is expected to fall to 3.3% by June, but then take another 19 months to fall below the 3% level. The board says it remains highly attentive to inflation risks. Services inflation, as opposed to goods inflation, remains the main concern. We're talking about stuff like insurance, electricity, as we found out yesterday, even Taylor Swift tickets. The Reserve Bank is battling excess demand in the economy. People still have jobs, migration's booming, businesses are investing, governments are spending, especially on infrastructure. There's more demand than there is supply, and that's putting that pressure on prices. On the other hand, as Ms. Bullock said yesterday, some people are doing it tough. Balancing the two isn't easy, and the governor said the best thing the Reserve Bank can do for people struggling is to get inflation lower.
Yeah, and the meeting is the first since the Reserve Bank implemented key recommendations of an independent review into the organisation.
One of those recommendations was that the governor hold a press conference after the announcement, which Ms. Bullock did. That teased out a number of issues, including that the bank is happy to cut rates before the target is reached, so long as it believes the target will be reached in a sustainable manner. For a non-seasoned media performer, Michelle Bullock's efforts were pretty credible. The governor was definitive in not giving a timeline for the next move in rates. That's the mistake her predecessor, Philip Lowe, made, which ultimately cost him his job. Financial markets reacted quickly to the announcement and Ms. Bullock's press conference. They decreased the likelihood of a rate cut in the first half of this year, and it seems investors think September is a likely time frame for the next reduction in interest rates. Importantly, investors still think the next move in rates will be down, not up.
I watched the press conference yesterday, Sean, and I thought it was really interesting for a layperson, I suppose, like myself, to be watching something like that. You could almost see Michelle Bullock thinking about how her questions, her answers were going to be kind of phrased in terms of how much does she need to explain almost the economic concepts and principles behind some of these things. And that was where that Taylor Swift reference came into it, which I thought was actually a really kind of interesting illustration of the difference between goods inflation and services inflation, with the fact is that services inflation is anything that you can't drop on your foot.
Yeah, it was a great line, wasn't it? She said goods are things that you can drop on your foot, which is a good way of thinking of it, really.
Yeah, indeed. And that was where the Taylor Swift reference kind of came into it. And I thought it was a really interesting and quite a good performance from someone just watching it, just to see basically how she went and how the media kind of handled it. I thought it was really quite fascinating. And hearing what Sherelle Murphy made of it as well, as an economist, but has also been a journalist as well. So she's kind of seen every side of it, much like you. So it is a great conversation and well worth sticking around for. Local markets, how did they perform yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 finished 0.6% lower to 7,582 points. The early afternoon interest rate announcement really had only marginal bearing on stocks. The tech stocks led the market lower yesterday, following on from a poor night on Wall Street. Energy stocks did best on higher oil prices. Among the large caps, Rio was down 3% and BHP 1.3% as the price of iron ore fell. Commonwealth Bank, Goodman and Macquarie Group were all down more than 1%, while Woodside was up 1%. WiseTech Global was the worst of the large caps, dropping nearly 4%. Worst performer on the day was West African Resources, down more than 10% after it lowered its production guidance. Cochlear also didn't have much of a day. It fell 6.5% after being downgraded by investment analysts. Best was Lynas Rare Earths, up more than 3%.
And what about international markets? What's going on there?
Well, the prospect of rate cuts in the US anytime soon are fading, and that's helping the US dollar, which hit a 3-month peak over the past 24 hours or so. Means the Aussie is depreciating against the greenback. It's now buying under 65 US cents. As I mentioned a moment ago, oil prices are up, iron ore prices were lower.
All right, we've got a bit to cover today. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the coalition will support Labor's changes to stage 3 tax cuts and then go to the next election with more benefits for higher income earners.
Yeah, so the great tax debate didn't really lift off in many ways, with the coalition party room agreeing to support the government's changes. Opposition leader Peter Dutton also resolved not to roll back the tax cuts for lower income earners if elected. Means a few things. The government's proposed changes, whereby 8 in 9 people are better off, will be passed. High income earners will receive an annual benefit of around $4,500 under the current arrangements. They were supposed to receive a benefit of about $9,000. Also, the Greens and Independents have become powerless to push the government to change the tax package. And by saying the opposition will push for more tax cuts for higher income earners at the next election, Mr. Dutton has well and truly made tax reform part of his platform for that next election, which has to occur in the next 14 months or so. The first question time of the year was held yesterday, dominated by the tax cut debate. It became somewhat heated. In fact, the opposition Treasury spokesperson Angus Taylor was forced to leave the House of Reps. Great to see Parliament's back. Things are back on, Michael.
Yes, indeed. And just before we leave politics, Sean, what does Peter Dutton say about the opposition's strategy for 2024? What are we going to see?
It was really interesting. He says the coalition wants to emphasise that the government adopt sensible but tough measures to improve tax policy, the National Disability Insurance Scheme and aged care. I love this line. He wants to be an opposition in the same vein as the John Howard opposition. Now, John Howard, from my memory, was in opposition in the mid-1990s. I can't quite remember what type of opposition he was. But anyway, that's the type of opposition that Peter Dutton wants to be.
Alrighty. Now, Sean, it was a day for the retailers yesterday, with Myer's share price jumping 16% and furniture seller Nick Scali soaring 17% after some strong numbers.
As we head into the reporting season, retailers aren't supposed to be the strongest performers, but Myer provided an earnings update. It doesn't report for a few weeks yet, and upgraded its profit forecasts. Also, its inventory levels, something analysts watch closely, are lower than this time last year. Nick Scali did report its December half-year earnings, and while they were down 29% on the back of a 20% drop in sales, it was actually better than expected, hence the share price surge. Retailers like Nick Scali rely on the housing cycle. People build or renovate, and they need to buy furniture to fill the space. The company yesterday said November, December and January was stronger than expected. Kind of augurs well. I mean, let's face it, it's only the first day of reporting season, so let's not get too excited. Nice to see we kick off with something decent though.
Yeah, off to a good start. Sean, your favourite, a question without notice. You mentioned that Myer was providing just an earnings update, but it will be reporting in a few weeks' time. And it used its earnings update to upgrade its profit forecast. Why does it do it if it's going to be reporting in a few weeks' time? Is it basically just to update people so that there is not a major shock when the new numbers come through?
That is correct. And Myer's reporting date is actually, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think it's just after the reporting season ends. So its full year is actually into January. So normally any of these updates would occur before February 1 for all companies whose balance date is December 31. We're getting one from Myer now because its balance date is actually, it's late January or something or other. So it actually doesn't report probably for 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, in fact.
Yeah.
But the gist of your question is, why do they do it? Well, it's like Domino's did last week, was it, when they came out and said we're having trouble in France and Japan. They prefer to get the bad news out often. The share price responds. And then when they do their earnings, people know what to expect.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, investors, Sean, are targeting lithium stocks, betting that the already beaten up sector has further to go.
The latest Australian Securities Investment Commission data shows that Pilbara Minerals, Sayona Mining, and Core Lithium are three of the top 5 most shorted stocks on the ASX. The other two are Graphite Group, Syrah Resources, and IDP Education. Short selling involves the investor taking a bet on a stock's share price falling. Already the share prices of the lithium companies have dropped sharply, but short sellers at least still think there's a way to go. Presumably we'll get an insight into how right they are when the lithium stocks report half-year earnings.
This is an interesting one, Sean. PwC Australia has given its 8,400 partners and staff access to a custom-built virtual assistant, creatively called ChatPwC, and it's capable of formatting data and writing code, summarising meetings and documents and writing emails, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like this story because it's a real-life example of how artificial intelligence can make a difference. Following a 6-month trial with more than 1,000 employees, all local PwC staff will have access to the new generative AI tool, which the firm hopes will boost productivity and the quality of client work, according to a report in the Financial Review. During the pilot, employees and partners used ChatPwC to prepare for client meetings by conducting specialised research on topics ranging from electricity generation to primary education and superannuation. Can you imagine that, Michael? If you're going to a meeting, you have no idea about the subject matter and you could just go to an AI software and get the information really quickly.
Oh.
I just think it's a way of really improving productivity. Now, the goal during the trial was to connect more of PwC's data and systems to generative AI, so the virtual assistant could provide insights on a client, industry, and things like any restrictions the firm had around providing services to them. PwC reckons the use of AI will help people get better answers from a broad range of data sources and systems. It does add, PwC, this is that ultimately, though, humans are responsible for any work produced from PwC, and that includes any work produced from ChatPwC.
Sean, a couple of Aussie business leaders got the support of very big investors over the past 24 hours. One is Tesla chair Robin Denholm, and the other is Domino's CEO Don May.
In Ms. Denholm's case, it was Cathie Wood. Now, Cathie Wood's a rock star of funds management in technology, particularly on Wall Street. She backed the chair, Robin Denholm. Now, remember, a court ruling last week said Denholm had a lackadaisical approach to corporate governance at the EV maker, and she was blinded by the amount of money she was making. Effectively, Wood, who's best known for making big bets on small tech companies who have successfully disrupted bigger players, described Denholm as a professional of unquestionable integrity. Ms. Wood's ARK Investment is a major owner of Tesla shares and a public admirer of Elon Musk. Still, to come out so vocally in support of Robin Denholm is a big plus for her. The other example over the past 24 hours is Domino's major owner and billionaire Jack Cowan. He's come to the defence of the pizza group's CEO, Don May. Cowan's chair of Domino's, and according to the Financial Review, has lost $2.8 billion on his shareholding since Domino's share price has tumbled. Now, Domino's share price is about $41. It peaked at about $160 or so in September 2021. So that drop, 160 odd to 40 odd, well, Jack Cowan's lost about $2.8 billion in that. However, he said that during the last couple of years, the ball hasn't bounced the right way for Domino's. That's one way of putting it. But the board is supportive of the direction Domino's is taking and is supportive of May.
Okay, let's take a look at international news now. And California, Sean, is looking at introducing what's known as Intelligent Speed Assist, which uses GPS location data to adjust a vehicle's top speed to reflect a road's posted speed limit.
I don't know whether this is a great idea or it's just Big Brother gone mad. Excessive speed is a factor in over 12,000 deaths in the US, or roughly a third of all crash fatalities. The problem got worse during COVID, according to Bloomberg. The traditional array of policy deterrence, police enforcement campaigns, speed cameras, that type of thing, seem unable to rein in the fastest drivers. So, California State Senator Scott Wiener is proposing a new approach. He's introducing a bill that would be the first in the US to require that speed limiters be installed on all new cars sold from 2027, with the devices set to 10 miles per hour above the speed limit. Drivers would be able to temporarily override the system, but it would click back in. Emergency vehicles would be exempt. Now, this isn't brand new because Europe has been playing around with this type of thing for a while, but fascinating. Could you imagine actually having the speed of your car controlled by someone else?
You know what? I like that idea. I mean, especially if you've got that kind of room that gives it 10 miles above the speed limit. I mean, what possible excuse can anyone have for needing to go faster than that anyway?
But if you've got a speed limit, why would you go 10 kilometres above? Shouldn't it be the speed limit?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But I mean, then you always have those arguments of, you need it to have a little bit of room just in case there's an emergency and you got to get out of the way, or you're overtaking and something comes around the corner and you got to get in quickly. You've got that 10 miles per hour buffer. So really, as far as I'm concerned, and no, it's not really my job to give opinions on this. Case closed, Sean.
Done.
Introduce it already.
Okay.
Fear and Greed has decided. Finally, Sean, King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer and will postpone public duties as he begins his course of treatment.
Charles III has been on the throne for less than 18 months following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, went into hospital for treatment of a benign prostate enlargement last week, and the cancer was discovered then. There is no detail of what type of cancer the king has, and a statement from the palace said Charles had revealed his illness to prevent speculation. He's already commenced a schedule of regular treatment. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he hoped for a speedy recovery for the king and one that will allow him to visit Australia later in the year as planned. We certainly wish him well.
Yeah, we certainly do. All right, up next, Sean, is the Fear and Greed daily interview. Sherelle Murphy, Chief Economist at EY, is your guest.
All about interest rates, what's going to happen, what's happening in the economy, how Michelle Bullock, the Reserve Bank Governor, did at her press conference yesterday. A must listen, Michael.
It certainly is. It is coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist, or you can get it at fearandgreed.com.au. And you know what else is coming out today, Sean, because today is Wednesday.
How do they afford that? What's it about today?
Well, new episode of How Do They Afford That out every Wednesday. And this week, Sean, we are looking at Frugal February, which is, because Canna Campbell, who we do the podcast with, financial planner, has been doing it for 20 plus years. And every month is another special occasion. So March is Manifesting March and various other things, but February is Frugal February. And it is a month where where there's all kinds of challenges to try and save money and then take that money that you've saved and invest it, basically. And so what we do today is actually count down the top 10 ways to save money in Frugal February. And it's actually, there's some good points on the list. In fact, I think I even contributed one of the 10 things. So a 10% contribution to a podcast. Whew.
I look forward to that. Canna, the wonderful Canna. So every time I listen to you and her chatting on a Wednesday and how do they afford that, I think she's always frugal. I don't think this is just a February thing. I reckon she's just, I say that as a compliment, Canna, not anything else. Yeah. I think she's like frugal Canna.
Well, she's very mindful about her money.
Mindful, better word. Yeah.
But you can find How Do They Afford That wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can also get that I'll put it in today's show notes as well, which is always very handy if you would like to get the top 10 tips on how to save some money in Frugal February. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 7th of February, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.